Everybody. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody. I'm so excited about today. Today's going to be a great day. Um, I have been finding so many messianic prophecies that to be able to share with you today because I told you that we would spend Fridays talking about prophecies that specifically have to do with the yearly reading cycle, but also that they've built on the theme that we've been talking about all week, right? So we started with Yeshua being challenged by the Pharisees and Jewish leaders at the time who were asking him, what is it lawful to do on Shabbat? Are you going to heal somebody on Shabbat? And and Messiah really he has a really fantastic response. So we talked about that on Sunday. Um, and then we moved through talking about from a proverb to the Psalms, right? We stuck in Psalms 25, which, by the way, has been miraculous for me all week. I keep going back to it again and again. And we're talking about rest and why Shabbat rest was made for us. Humans were not made to fill a day because God needed to take some time off. Like, that's the wrong approach. God created a system and a rhythm of how you could stay physically and spiritually healthy. And so taking a day off for Shabbat's super important. So the Messianic prophecy that I wanted to share with you today, as we're heading toward this, it's actually the time we read the Ten Commandments is this week. The first time the Ten Commandments are introduced to the people who've just been freed from slavery and gone through the Red Sea. So you'd think to yourself, why do you have to review that? Well, I got news for you. We review it every year, and it's reviewed multiple times in the Word, and it's called the 10 Words. Even though they're actually sentences. And the first one in Judaism starts out with, I am the God who took you by the hand and led you out of Egypt, right? He wanted to make us free. And then he created, in meeting Jethro, his uncle, he was instructed by, his father-in-law. He was a Midianite priest. He was instructed, you can't bear the burden of these people yourself. Write down the ordinances and the laws and teach them so that they can live in community. And so the Ten Commandments aren't really just about you making sure not to make God angry. They really were created so that we would live together in community at peace. And so I then took you through to the very end of the history of the Jewish people before Messiah returns that's actually in the Bible. Now, there's plenty of places you can read history, but the history books end with Second Chronicle, and my goodness gracious, to hear the leaders just continue to fall again and again and again because they keep turning away from God and serving other gods, it leads to destruction when you do that. So why would I bring you there as we're getting ready to learn the Ten Commandments? Because I'm telling you that the joy of reading your Bible is keeping God's words in front of your eyes. So it's like bumper bowling. It's easier to strike the pins if you're not worried about the gutters, right? So just if you can just get your mind out of the gutter and get your mind focused on the things that please God, I think you'll find that God can really reward you in ways you can't even possibly imagine. So the Messianic prophecy I want to bring you to today is, if you remember yesterday, we talked about the fact that it said that those leaders wouldn't heed the words of Jeremiah, right? So Jeremiah is one of the prophets. So I want to take you to Jeremiah and show you what God says about rest for his people, because there's so many words where God is saying, you're going into exile, but I'm going to redeem you. The land is going to have its rest, but I am always going to save a remnant of my people. So I'm going to read this really amazing prophecy. It's so awesome that I actually did a wood burning of it in the front Torah Ark doors in our synagogue. It's one of my all-time favorites. So I'm going to take you to Jeremiah 31 through 33. It's great. Behold, days were coming. It's a declaration of Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. It says those two names because the people had become divided. We have got to stay in unity, folks. We've got to stay loving one another. That's part of how community works. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, for they broke my covenant. Okay, so he's not just talking about when the Ten Commandments get broken. He's talking about that they keep breaking the covenant. God's faithful, but man, we aren't. For they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them. It is a declaration of Adonai. But this is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after those days. It is a declaration of Adonai. Listen to this. I will put my Torah. He's going to take all 5 of those first books that he gave Moses and all the laws and all of what they went through, all the miracles, all the signs and wonders, even though the generation itself was lost, but for 2 survivors, right? And all the offspring. He saved the remnant. He says, I will put my Torah, the whole scroll, within them. Yes, I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. And no longer will each teach his neighbor or each his brother, saying, Know Adonai. For they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. It is a declaration of Adonai. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. Thus says Adonai, who gives the sun as a light by day, and the fixed order of the moon, and the stars as a light by night, who stirs up the sea so its waves roar. Adonai Tsevaot, the Lord of armies, the Lord of hosts is his name. Only if this fixed order departs from before me, it's a declaration of Adonai, then also might Israel's offspring cease from being a nation before me, for all time. Thus says Adonai, only if heaven above can be measured and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, then also I will cast off the offspring of Israel, for all they have done is a declaration of Adonai. I got news for you. You cannot measure the world. You cannot measure the seas. God has an amazing, miraculous plan to continue to save his children generation after generation. And the forgiveness of sins isn't by the blood of bulls and goats anymore. It's the blood of Messiah himself. God came himself, became the lamb, and we're going to start looking into that now. So, in closing, we're coming up on the Feast of Esther. Why does it matter? The word God isn't even in the book of Esther, because you're going to realize that the very last words of that were underneath that part we read at the last of Second Chronicles, at the end of the Jewish Bible, it talks about King Cyrus that invited the Jewish people to go back and rebuild God's temple. And I'm telling you that what precipitated that was when a time such as this came, and God hid a woman in a place where she could call on a leader to help. And I'm telling you, Esther moments are in the lives of all of God's daughters. So we're going to start studying Esther next week and looking for your Esther moments when God's going to use you to open up a way of escape for God's people. Have a great day.